In the Early Start programme, Literatures in Ireland, we look at literature in Ireland in the English language. We look in particular at the novel form in Ireland.
I've loved it so far. It's the literature pre-start course, and it has an excellent emphasis on particularly Irish and Anglo-Irish literature. It's been very interesting.
For the Elizabeth Bowen novel, we travel to North Cork, just outside this very small village of Farrahy, to the site of Bowen's Court, where Elizabeth Bowen's novel The Last September is set. By doing that, we experience the place and, in a sense, how important for both authors a sense of place is, and how much that is part of the construction of the novel itself.
So far, I've absolutely loved it. I've learned a lot about the culture, and I've learned about people I'd never even heard about, but I really appreciate the literature because it's something I haven't been exposed to in the States. So it's been really fantastic just to learn about.
Bowen's novel is particularly poignant because it looks not just at the death of a particular way of life of the Anglo-Irish in Ireland, but also at the death of the big house itself. The story of Bowen's Court is a very sad story in one way. It is the story of a house that was finished and completed in the 1770s and lived down through the centuries as the family home of the Bowens. Then, when we get into the 20th century, Elizabeth Bowen, who was an only child, inherits the house from her father. She then struggles on for many years with trying to maintain the house, which is very large and very expensive to maintain. And she maintains it through her writing. Eventually that struggle becomes much too great for her, and she decides very reluctantly that she'll sell. She waved goodbye to the house, returned to London, and very shortly afterwards learned that instead of inhabiting the house, he'd actually knocked it down. So when we go to visit the site of Bowen's Court, what we find are the remains of what was there. What's most interesting for the students, I think, and particularly where the novel The Last September is concerned, in the novel, Bowen has the house, which is modelled on Bowen's Court, Danielstown, burned down in the last page. It's burnt out in the 1920s, the end of 1919. What's important about visiting the site is looking at what was there, but also thinking about the ideas of place that Bowen herself has. She believes that a place where a family have lived for many generations breeds that past, the history of that family live there, that somehow or other the air is thick with the memories of the past. And this is partially what I want the students to experience when we're there, is not just the beauty of the landscape where the house is set, because that's what remains to us now, not the house itself, but that feeling of a place occupied by the history and by the past.
I think it's really helpful to have a sense of place and setting. When we were walking out in Bowen's Court, when the lawnmowers died down and when the dogs stopped barking, it was very quiet, and you got that sense of serenity and just that stillness that I think is really essential in the setting of the book we're reading, The Last September. And it kind of took you back a couple years, and so you could really finally experience just that level of what you're reading.
In order to capture this, the novel is set in 1919. It was published in 1929, but set in 1919. So she's writing it very fresh after the experiences of that period, of the War of Independence period.
Just from the site alone, you can sort of feel the aura of the history that went down there. Just between the vistas, the way you can look at the sky and the hills in the distance, you can really feel that energy of what was going on there in the past.
One of the other things I think is important for my students to experience is that Bowen suggests in the novel that the house itself is of enormous importance. that it is personified on almost every second page of the novel. The house feels, believes in itself, is afraid. So it often has the emotions that the characters don't seem to be able to exhibit themselves. They're busily maintaining the culture and the way of life, whereas the house is the thing that's experiencing the difficulties and the trauma.
Because of the hands-on, because of visiting Bowen's Court Photo House, it is just so, it opens up the course so that we can actually feel what the writer was feeling at the time.
To find out more information about this course, log on to the UCC website, and on the International Student Office you will find a direct link to the Early Start programmes, and the Literatures in Ireland is one of those.